The deafening mechanical roar of the diesel water pump shatters the humid silence of the Amazon rainforest, vibrating through the thick, toxic mud beneath your bare feet. You are 21 years old, standing waist-deep in a murky, poisoned river tributary, gripping a high-pressure hose that blasts the riverbank into a slurry of rock and silt. The air around you is suffocating, thick with the scent of rotting vegetation, diesel exhaust, and the sweet metallic tang of vaporized mercury. You are an illegal garimpiro, a gold digger at the absolute bottom of a massive, invisible resource extraction empire. A sudden, violent crack echoes above the roar of the machinery. The saturated earth of the 50-foot cliff face directly above you gives way. Thousands of tons of red mud and shattered timber collapse into the pit. The avalanche instantly crushes the wooden sluice box operating a few yards to your left. You dive backward into the shallow water, gasping for breath as the shockwave of displaced mud hits you. When you wipe the burning grit from your eyes, you see it. The heavy, iron-reinforced separation grate, holding nearly 4 pounds of raw, unfiltered gold dust, is teetering on the edge of the rushing river current, about to be swept away forever into the deep water. But trapped beneath a massive, splintered mahogany trunk right next to it is a 14-year-old boy. He is a local kid who shared his meager rations with you last night. The water is rising rapidly over his chest. He is screaming in absolute terror, begging you to help him lift the log. Your overseer, a brutal man with a machete strapped to his hip, screams at you from the muddy embankment above. He aims a rusted pistol in your direction and makes the brutal mathematics of your life crystal clear. If that gold washes into the river, the crushing debt you owe the syndicate for your transport and your tools will instantly double. You will be enslaved in this green hell until the day you die. He orders you to grab the grate. Your heart hammers a frantic, erratic rhythm against your ribs. The boy's terrified eyes lock onto yours, begging for his life. Your morality engages in a violent, agonizing war with your primal survival instinct. You think of your starving family in the favelas of Manaus. You squeeze your eyes shut, aggressively crushing the very last fragile fragment of your humanity. You turn your back on the screaming boy, plunge your hands into the freezing water, and drag the heavy steel grate of gold up onto the muddy bank. You listen to the rushing water swallow the boy's final desperate gasps, knowing with absolute certainty that you have just sold your soul to the deepest, darkest level of the underworld. Level 1. Beginner. For the next 8 months, your entire existence is defined by the mud, the chemical burns on your hands, and the unrelenting paranoia of the extraction pits. You are a laborer in a massive, illegal supply chain that operates entirely off the grid. You work 16 hours a day, breathing in mercury fumes over open campfires as you burn the amalgam to separate the pure gold. Your skin is permanently stained a sickly grayish brown, and your lungs constantly ache. You're surrounded by hundreds of other desperate, hollow-eyed men who have traded their futures for the illusion of a daily wage. You learn the brutal mechanics of the camp quickly. There are no safety regulations, no medical tents, and absolutely no mercy. The syndicate that owns this stretch of the jungle operates through absolute terror and strict production quotas. If you try to slip a single glittering flake into your pocket to sell on the black market, the camp enforcers will publicly shatter your hands with a sledgehammer. You keep your head down. You do not speak to the men working beside you, because friendships in this hellhole only become painful liabilities when the inevitable mining accidents occur. You save every crumpled, mud-stained real you earn, hiding the cash inside the hollowed-out sole of your rubber boot. You desperately tell yourself that you are only doing this temporarily, just until your family's debts are cleared. But every time you hand over a heavy pouch of refined gold to the armed guards, you notice the cold, approving nods of the camp commanders. They see your silent, mechanical efficiency. They see a man who does not ask questions when the weak are left behind to die. You have proven that you value the product over human life, making you a prime candidate for elevation. Level 2. Proving. The promotion does not come with a handshake. It comes with a loaded 9mm pistol and the keys to a rusted high-speed river skiff. You are pulled out of the toxic mud and placed behind the outboard motor. You are now a river courier. Your mission is to transport 50 pounds of raw, illicit gold from the deep jungle camps to the clandestine airstrips hidden on the edge of the territory. The cargo in the false bottom of your boat is worth over $1 million. You drive strictly at night, navigating treacherous, submerged logs and shifting sandbars with your headlights killed, relying entirely on the moonlight to avoid tearing the hull apart. At 3 a.m., a sweeping spotlight hits your face. A heavily armed federal military patrol boat blocks the narrow tributary. A corrupt army captain, aggressively wielding a submachine gun, steps onto your skiff. You know the drill. You pull out a thick, prearranged envelope of cash intended to grease the wheels of the state military. But tonight, the captain is greedy. He looks at the heavy duffel bags, smiles a rotten smile, and demands the entire shipment. He threatens to execute you on the spot as an armed smuggler and dump your body to the Caymans if you do not comply. You look at the weapon in his hands. You know that if you lose this shipment, the syndicate will visit your mother's home in the city and collect their losses in blood. You do not panic. You feign submission, dropping to your knees and reaching slowly into your jacket as if to surrender your personal wallet. In a fraction of a second, your hand closes on the grip of your pistol. You draw the weapon and fire 3 suppressed rounds directly into the captain's chest and neck. He collapses backward into the black water without a sound. His 2 young conscripts drop their rifles in sheer terror. You coldly order them to turn their patrol boat around and vanish, where they will be next. As you start your engine and drive away into the night, your hands are shaking violently on the steering column. But the realization settles over you like a heavy blanket. The invisible line has been permanently crossed. You are no longer just a laborer surviving a corrupt system. You are now its violent enforcer.
Level 3. Trusted. You return to the jungle not as a runner, but as the camp overseer. The air still reeks of diesel fuel and raw earth, but you no longer touch the shovels or the mercury. You observe the misery from the shaded porch of an elevated wooden field office, wearing a crisp, clean shirt and a holstered weapon. You command a small army of heavily armed mercenaries. Your sole responsibility is maximizing extraction efficiency and crushing any sign of rebellion among the thousands of undocumented workers ripping the rainforest apart below. The pressure from the regional bosses is absolute. The global market price for gold has skyrocketed due to international financial instability, and the syndicate demands a 40% increase in production. You authorize the use of massive, highly illegal hydraulic dredges that completely annihilate the riverbanks, dumping tons of toxic mercury directly into the primary drinking water supply of the indigenous tribes living downstream. One humid afternoon, your guards drag a local indigenous leader into your office. His face is bruised and bleeding. He has been organizing a localized blockade, using wooden canoes to stop your fuel barges from reaching the camp, begging you to stop poisoning his people's children. He looks up at you with terrified, pleading eyes. If you show him mercy or halt the dredging, the entire camp will sense your weakness, production will stall, and the syndicate will execute you for losing control of the territory. You stand up, your face an emotionless, frozen mask. You do not raise your voice. You calmly order your guards to take the leader back to his village, burn every single canoe on the riverbank to ash, and pour a drum of diesel fuel directly into their remaining clean water well. You stand on your balcony and watch the black smoke rise above the tree line in the distance. You feel absolutely nothing. The psychological erosion is total. You have successfully compartmentalized your soul, viewing the human beings in the forest not as people, but as disposable obstacles standing in the way of your quarterly targets. Level 4. Operator. Your ruthless efficiency buys your ticket out of the jungle entirely. You are relocated to a bustling, heavily air-conditioned commercial office in the center of Manaus. You are the supply chain fixer. The raw, blood-stained gold arrives at your secure warehouses in the dead of night. Your job is magically transforming it into perfectly legal, ethically sourced merchandise. You oversee a massive, highly sophisticated operation where the illegal gold is melted down and poured into crude molds to look like scrap jewelry or legally mined artisan gold. You sit behind a mahogany desk, surrounded by stacks of falsified customs declarations, forged certificates of origin, and fake tax receipts. The stakes at this level are astronomical. You are moving tens of millions of dollars in product. One afternoon, a strict, uncorruptible federal auditor from the Ministry of Finance arrives at your office unannounced. He has been tracking anomalous shipping weights and tax discrepancies. He demands to personally audit your primary holding vaults and review the physical paperwork for the last 6 months of export shipments. If he opens those vaults, he will instantly identify the chemical signature of the illegal jungle gold. The entire global supply chain will be exposed, bringing down the wrath of international sanctions and federal raids. You do not order a loud, messy assassination. Dead federal auditors draw the devastating attention of national intelligence agencies. You choose a far more elegant, psychological solution. You access the syndicate's deep intelligence network. You discover that the auditor's teenage son was recently involved in a fatal, hit-and-run drunk driving accident that the family desperately covered up. You do not make a dramatic threat. You simply invite the auditor to dinner at an exclusive steakhouse. You slide a heavy, encrypted USB drive across the table, containing the undeniable police reports, the suppressed dashcam footage, and the blood test results. You softly explain that he does not stamp your export documents as fully compliant by tomorrow morning. The files will be anonymously sent to the national press and the victim's family. The auditor stares at the drive, his hands trembling violently, his spirit utterly shattering. He pockets the drive, signs your manifests without a single inspection, and walks out a broken man. You sip your vintage wine, realizing the intoxicating truth. You have mastered the art of making massive billion-dollar problems simply vanish into thin air. Level 5. Insider. You ascend into the pristine, sterilized atmosphere of the corporate elite. The humid warehouses and muddy boots are permanently replaced by a sprawling, glass-walled corner office in a foreign financial capital like Panama City or Miami. You wear tailored Italian suits that cost more than a miner makes in 5 years. You are the corporate launderer, the invisible financial architect shielding the empire's atrocities from the global banking system. The physical gold has been successfully exported to refineries in Switzerland and Dubai. Now you must wash the rivers of dirty money flowing back. You construct a dizzying, impenetrable labyrinth of shell companies in Cyprus, holding trusts in the British Virgin Islands, and anonymous crypto wallets. You utilize trade-based money laundering, setting up dummy electronics companies that over-invoice for computer chips that will never be built, generating perfectly clean, taxable revenue on paper. You regularly dine with the polished, smiling executives of massive Western banks and luxury jewelry conglomerates. They sit across from you at Michelin-starred restaurants, swirling $1,000 glasses of champagne. They know exactly where the gold comes from. They know about the mud, the blood, the mercury poisoning, and the burned villages. But they rely entirely on your brilliant network of shell companies to provide them with absolute, airtight, plausible deniability. They pay you exorbitant, multi-million-dollar premiums so they can stand on brightly lit stages in New York and Paris, boldly claiming their supply chains are 100% ethical, conflict-free, and transparent. The hypocrisy is nauseating, but the money is a powerful, blinding anesthetic. You deposit millions into your own offshore accounts. However, the extreme isolation begins to set in. You cannot tell your family what you truly do. You employ private security contractors to sweep your penthouse for listening devices twice a week. You look at the slick, wealthy executives shaking your hand, and you realize you are nothing more than their highly paid garbage collector, quietly sanitizing the horrific sins required to maintain their trillion-dollar market caps.
Level 6. Authority. You are promoted to Regional Director. You command the entire resource extraction apparatus for the hemisphere. You no longer manage spreadsheets or logistics. You manage governments, politicians, and private armies. A newly elected, fiercely idealistic president takes power in the extraction country. He publicly vows to deploy the full might of the national military to burn the illegal mining camps to the ground, seize the airstrips, and arrest the syndicate leadership. The international media is hyper-focused on his environmental crusade, broadcasting his speeches to the world. Your corporate overlords are panicking, demanding stability. They want you to hire a hit squad and assassinate the president. But your brilliant sociopathic mind sees the broader architecture of power. Assassinating a popular head of state creates a martyr and brings the devastating weight of the global intelligence community down on your head. You see the crisis as the ultimate opportunity.
You arrange a highly classified, heavily guarded meeting in a neutral jurisdiction. You secretly funnel $20 million in untraceable cash to the leaders of the country's most violent, heavily armed urban drug cartels, men who have absolutely nothing to do with your gold mining operations. You order them to launch a massive, coordinated campaign of urban terrorism in the nation's capital. Within days, the capital city descends into absolute, terrifying chaos. Car bombs detonate outside police stations, prisons riot, politicians are kidnapped in daylight. The public panics, taking to the streets to demand security. The idealistic president is completely politically paralyzed. Desperate to maintain control of the state, he is forced to recall the entire national military from the Amazon basin, deploying them into the cities to fight the cartels. The dense fog of urban war provides the ultimate, impenetrable smokescreen. With the military gone, your illegal extraction empire is free to operate at maximum, unchecked capacity. You sit in your luxury estate watching the news reports of burning city blocks and military curfews, knowing with absolute certainty that you personally funded the violence. You have become a geopolitical puppeteer, buying rivers of human blood in the city to protect corporate profit margins in the jungle. Level 7. Power Broker. You reach the stratosphere of the criminal elite. You are no longer just a corporate director, you are a shadow entity that dictates the entire political economy of the developing world. You dictate which environmental protection laws are quietly gutted in midnight legislative sessions, and which judges sit on the Supreme Court. But absolute power attracts the most dangerous, relentless predators. A brilliant, fearless investigative committee from the United States Department of the Treasury has spent 4 years meticulously following your digital breadcrumbs. The lead federal prosecutor has bypassed the shell companies and pierced the corporate veils. He possesses irrefutable high-definition satellite proof of the illegal expansions, and worse, he has secured internal banking records directly linking the urban terror funding to your personal offshore accounts. He's preparing to issue a massive, unsealed federal indictment that will trigger an Interpol red notice, freeze billions of corporate assets, and lock you in a maximum security supermax cell for the rest of your life. You cannot shoot your way out of a federal indictment. You choose a path of pure, unadulterated psychological destruction. You deploy your elite cyber warfare division to tear the prosecutor's life apart digit by digit. They dig into the deepest, darkest corners of his digital footprint. They discover that his trusted lead investigator, his right-hand man and closest friend, has been secretly battling a crippling gambling addiction, embezzling federal funds to cover his massive losses in Macau. You do not mail a physical threat. You utilize your network of corrupt tech executives to orchestrate a flawless, invisible digital assassination. You have highly illegal, sickening contraband digitally planted directly onto the prosecutor's own secure servers, perfectly framing him as the mastermind behind his subordinates' embezzlement and illicit activities. You anonymously tip off the federal authorities, providing them with the exact IP addresses and access logs. Before the prosecutor can unseal your indictment, his home is raided by the FBI. He's dragged out in handcuffs, his reputation instantly and permanently obliterated. The Treasury Department immediately fires him and completely buries his research to distance themselves from the scandalous fallout. You sit in the quiet, dim lighting of your private study, sipping a glass of rare scotch, watching his tearful mugshot flash across the news networks. You did not spill a single drop of physical blood, yet you utterly destroyed his life, his credibility, and the entire federal case. The truth is locked away in an evidence locker discredited forever. You have successfully hacked the architecture of reality itself.
Level 8. Architect. You have reached the absolute, undeniable apex of the empire. You sit entirely alone in the suffocating silence of a sprawling, glass-walled penthouse perched at the very top of a towering skyscraper in Geneva. You own the building. You own the politicians who zoned the building. You control the global supply of the most vital illicit resources on the planet. The extraction machine is a self-sustaining, multi-billion-dollar leviathan that operates perfectly across the globe without you ever having to issue a single verbal command. You gaze down on the glittering, chaotic grid of the city lights reflecting off the dark surface of Lake Geneva. You possess a personal net worth exceeding $1 billion. You are entirely untouchable. Yet, as you stand in the sterile, freezing air of your luxury fortress, you are utterly, completely hollowed out. You have sacrificed your morality, your identity, and your absolute peace of mind to construct this empire. You realize the ultimate, agonizing illusion of control. You did not conquer the system conquered you. You are permanently, inextricably bound to the encrypted servers, the blackmail files, the ghost fleets, and the endless, suffocating extortion. You cannot walk down a public street without a heavy security detail scanning the crowd for threats. You cannot trust a single smile, a single handshake, or a single promise from the people around you. You know that if you step away for a single second, if you stop feeding the offshore accounts, balancing the blood-soaked ledgers, or crushing the rival factions, the entire global economy you built will violently collapse. The corporate wolves and mercenary commanders you currently hold at bay will immediately tear you to shreds to claim your empty throne. You are forced to rule a quiet, luxurious hell of your own making until the day you die. You walk to the edge of the reinforced glass and look straight down at the street located 80 stories below. Even from this immense height, your mind wanders back across the oceans, past the pristine ports and the quiet shell companies, straight back to the suffocating, sweltering heat of the toxic Amazon mud. You know exactly what is happening in the shadows right at this very second. Some desperate, terrified 21-year-old kid is standing waist-deep in the poisoned river, gripping a high-pressure hose. He is staring at a collapsing mud bank, listening to the screams of a trapped friend, being offered a choice between saving a life or grabbing a steel grate full of gold to pay off his crushing debt. That young man is stepping into the darkness, desperately believing that if he is just smart enough and ruthless enough, he can beat the odds, survive the system, take the money, and walk away clean. He does not understand the absolute cost of his ambition. He has absolutely no idea that the prize for winning the game is losing your soul entirely, locking yourself in a glass cage suspended in the sky, completely alone. But you do. The cycle resets.